when they put a number on every Jew, conjures various images in our mind. The image that I actually used on the flyer itself for this shiur is a list of the Jews who were deported from Bernburg to Theresienstadt in April of 1942. Of the names on this list, in point of fact, only 2 people survived from the whole group, and that, of course, reminds us of something very, very heavy. And when we come to Parshat Shekalim, I deliberately named it this because the whole idea that Haman Yemach Shemo was trying to put a number on the Jewish people, and this in 2 senses. Number one, in terms of tabulating where Jews were, and number 2, obviously, in terms of putting a price. And we'll focus a little bit on that today, just so you know where I'm going. It's the commodification of Jewish people by reducing Jewish people to numbers is to dehumanize, and of course is unfortunately part of the slippery slope down into terrible depravity of murder and genocide. Of course, the language also matters. Note that when someone wants to refer to assets that they have, that they want to be able to move around, they call it liquidating the assets, to liquidate. That's what it means. And it was not accidental that the Nazis, Yamach Shemam v'Zichram, actually employed and invoked that exact language in their euphemistic language in order to dehumanize Jewish people, but also to distance themselves from what it was that they were doing. I think it's hard for me, I don't know for others, it's hard for me to read the beginning portions of Megilat Esther without thinking of some of these parallels to other elements of our history that are from the more recent past. There are, of course, many differences as well, but just in terms of this idea that the nefarious foe of the Jewish people is going to try to make lists and figure out where everybody is. Remember that Haman's exact argument is the Jewish people is everywhere. Somehow you can't pin them down. They're everywhere. And just to realize that reality is scary. And I think the Megillah tells us about this for good reason in advance, as we're getting underway to understand something about how the plotting against Jewish people, lo aleinu, functions. And of course, a way in which, in a certain manner, we're meant to take heed, but also to respond or maybe preempt in a certain way this tendency, call it what you will. So here on the screen is, just that is the list in the background of these people from Bernburg, of which exactly 2 people survived from this list. Everyone else perished and was murdered. Let's look at some of the themes inside the Megillah, and we'll get underway presently. If you don't have a Tanakh in front of you, it's a good idea to take one out. If for some reason you are not planning to do that, or you don't have one handy, so I already tried to plan ahead a little bit just to give us something on screen. You can look it up for yourself at Chabad.org or Sefaria. You can see it in front of you here. I'll put it on the screen just for ease of use. If you don't want to go scurrying for a Tanakh, so you like to hold it in hand, it's just better for them. So just to look at the section particularly, and I'm just homing in on certain sections in order to focus us. The exact argument of Haman begins with, and I'm sort of glossing over it to get to the part about the counting, but just to note that there is already a claim about the Jewish people being scattered and separate and everywhere. The sense of ubiquity of the Jewish people in terms of the presence of the Jewish people is itself a feature. And of course, all of the other imprecations and insinuations, rather, about the Jewish people that appear in this one pasuk. But in this pasuk Tet, chapter 3, verse 9, we find a very strange way that Haman, who is trying to speak in verse 8, pasuk Chet, to the idea that this is going to be in the best national interest, in verse 9, he's already up to buying it somehow. Again, I say each time, every translation is an interpretation, and Chabad.org is not an exception to that. Everyone has their own version based on the Mefarshim that they look at and their predilections, etc. In this rendering in English, it sounds that there's going to be money that will be paid to the people who are doing the work. The translation here, right? If the king finds favor, if this idea finds favor in his eyes, let him write that they be destroyed. 10,000 talents of silver, eshkol, I will pay in this case, or collect, but it seems al yedeo sehamlacha lehavi el ginze hamelech. Now, I'm going to put it into the treasury of the king, into the treasury somehow. Now, if you look at some of the mefarshim on this pasuk, and particularly just even at the Gemara itself, we find here a linkage between the idea that somehow he's going to be, is he paying the money? Is he collecting the money to give to someone else? It's ambiguous in the pasuk, and the various mefarshim on the pasuk understand it variously. We'll come to some of that if there's time. But look with me at the Gemara Masechet Megillah here that describes what transpires. Im ala melech tov yikatev la'abdam v'aser la'afim kikar kesef amar reish lakish galui v'yadua lifnei mi she'amar v'ayah ha'olam, revealed and known is it before the one who spoke and the world came into being, she'atid Haman lishkol shkalim al Yisrael, that Haman would in some way want to collect or pay, according to the Gemara here. Reish Lakish thinks it's actually Haman is saying to the king, I will pay you for the privilege of destroying them. I'm sort of sweetening the deal, sire. I will get the money and I will pay you and you will fill your coffers with it. Lefichach, therefore, hiktim shiklehen lishkalav. Therefore, the shkalim of the Jewish people precede the shkalim of Haman. By the by, if you look up further along the Mishnayot of Masachet Megillah, it tells us, in fact, that what we're going to do this Shabbat, reading the first of four special Parshat Shekalim, is actually intrinsically related to the time of year that we're in. And here, this Gemara connects it specifically to the story of Haman. As we'll see soon, that's not actually the way the Mishnah plays it out. It seems there's another reason why there should be the calling out of the Shekalim and the announcement about Shekalim. But Reish Lakish, one of the great sages of the Talmud, says, you know something? The reason why we have the Shekalim, at least one of the reasons, is somehow related to, or to offset, to play against what Haman Yimach Shemo sought to do. He wanted to pay the king money in order to sweeten the deal. We are going to get our money in, and we're going to pay, as it were, into the King of Kings treasury by giving to the Mikdash. V'hainu d'tnan, as it says, and here is the quote from that Mishnah, not a Masechet Megillah, but one that appears in Masechet Shekalim. Be'echad be'adar, the beginning of Adar, mashmin al Shekalim v'al hakilayim. Here is when they would call for the Shekalim to be collected, as well as the kilayim has to do with the admixture of various types of produce that were not meant to be sown together, that over the time of the rainy season might have come to be overgrown. And now to separate them out, there was a call that everyone should go to their fields and separate them out. This Mishnah Masechet Shekalim is not related to Purim at all. When Masechet Megillah describes Parshat Shekalim, it's talking about the reading of the first of four special weeks. The first one is on the day of Rosh Chodesh Adar, which we have this time on Shabbat, or on the Shabbat preceding Rosh Chodesh Adar. And the idea here is that every Jew was meant to pay in this Machzit HaShekel that we know very well, the mitzvah of Machzit HaShekel, which we'll look up momentarily in the Psukim. And the payment of that shekel was itself going to be for all of the public communal offerings that would be offered throughout the year ahead. Most specifically and most frequently, the daily offerings in the morning and the afternoon in the Makom HaMikdash, in the place of the Beit HaMikdash. And the idea here of collecting this money was very much bound up with the notion that every Jew pays in, contributes, and thereby participates in the communal structure, wherever they might find themselves in terms of whether they live in close proximity, they're going to come in person to be there, to visit, or whether they're sending the check in, sort of paying membership, if you will. That's what the membership was the Shekalim. They would announce Rosh Chodesh Adar that the new funds would be drawn from at the beginning of the new year. In this case, Rosh Chodesh Nisan, coming up in just a few weeks' time. So if you look at the psukim themselves, we find that there's actually a mitzvah that, according to many, remains a mitzvah min haTorah. Ad hayom hazeh, it's the mitzvah of specifically collecting on an annual basis for this tithe. You can find it at the beginning of Parshat Ki Tisa. It's found in your Chumash, chapter 30 of Sefer Shmot, verses 11 and onward. And we find here that Hashem gives a mitzvah to Moshe Rabbeinu, and that is Ki Tisa et rosh bnei Yisrael lifkudehem. It sounds like it's whenever the Jewish people are going to be counted. V'natnu ish kofer nafsho la'Hashem bifkodotam v'leyabahem negaf bifkodotam. There should be a count that happens that is somehow related to the giving in some way of something that will atone for the souls of the Jewish people. At first, it doesn't tell us what it is. We know what it is because we know it's machzit shekel. But just to realize first, when the count is going to happen, let there not be a plague. We just talked about this extensively in the 4-part series about the first coronavirus in Jewish history, brought about related to a corona, a crown on the head of David HaMelech. That was the previous series. So some of us on this call know a lot about this subject already. It shouldn't be a plague on account of the counting. Therefore, you're going to have to do something that's an atonement payment. Zayitnu, this is what shall be paid. This is what should be paid, and it tells you the currency, etc. A half shekel will be paid on an annual basis that will be raised up, as it were, in the service of Hashem. Now, by the by, is actually the Chazal learned 3 layers of collection here. Layer number 1 is, in fact, for the purpose of a census. Layer number 2 is machzit shekel for the building of part of the Mishkan, specifically the silver sockets that the boards that formed the Mishkan were going to rest within. So that's the silver they were giving was to be melted down, made into these sockets, and the boards that formed the structure of the Mishkan itself would be resting within them. Third, the machzit hashekel for the ongoing upkeep of the communal offerings to keep the fires burning, quite literally, on the mizbeach with the korban tamid and any other korban tzibur that was to be offered. It tells you the age of the people. It's anyone who's 20 and up. And then it tells us that it's actually a great equalizer. The wealthy shall not give more. The impoverished or indigent shall not give less. Has to be a machzit hashekel, and to raise it up, and indeed, latet et trumat Hashem, the raising up unto Hashem of this. Truma is a tithe, but truma means to elevate something. Here you're elevating it. L'chapel nafshotechem. Again, that word having to do with kapara. This money shall be taken, and it mentions that it's going to be specifically for the avodat ol moed. That's right here. Avodat ol moed. What do we learn right after that? I want to focus on these words. V'haya livnei Yisrael zikaron lifnei Hashem l'chapel nafshotechem. Let this be a remembrance before God to atone for your souls. And we finish there. That's what we're going to read. This little section, these few psukim from verse 11, the beginning of Parshat Ki Tisa, through verse 16. Doesn't highlight nicely on my screen over here, but you get the gist. This is what we're going to read in Shul this Shabbat for Parshat Shekalim. So we have Haman coming to Achashverosh and somehow mixing into the deal, sweetening the deal by pointing out, I'm also going to pay you off. It'll be lucrative somehow. According to some, maybe it means it's going to pay the workers. According to others, some of the Mefarshim point out, maybe what's going on is Achashverosh, quite rightly, could argue against Haman. We may not like that spread apart, scattered nation that seems to be everywhere. Don't say their name. And by the way, their name is never mentioned in the conversations between Achashverosh and Haman. Wink, wink, nod, nod. However, they bring in nice money. It's tax revenue. And if we get rid of them, we won't have tax revenue. Says Haman, let me offset it for you. We're going to get everything. We'll take the whole loot and it'll be ours. And then we don't have to worry about them anymore, right? And again, the historical analogs for me, and I think for many people, the bells start ringing, right? So, for instance, the reality that the name of the Jewish people is never spoken. Why couldn't they just speak it out? They're talking to the two of them. Instead, we have this long-winded, there's a people, they're around, they're everywhere, they're scattered, they're among us, they don't listen, they're not good. What does the king answer? Takes off his ring after the pitch is made, gives it to him. He just hands it over, and what does he say to him? Oh, you know what? Keep the change. More than that, keep all the money. And you can take the money. Do whatever you want. It's up to you. And look at the order. Money is on his mind first. You can have it. Meaning, I don't need your payment. Why not? Why doesn't he need the payment? He doesn't want to put more money in his treasury. Well, here we go. When the letters are being written, of course, and it's signed and sealed because the king has given his signature away to Haman. Last night was the girls' bat mitzvah group, and I described to them in my anachronistic, maybe out of touch way, but trying to relate it to them. I explained that it's as if lahavdol, Haman received the passwords to all of Achashverosh's social media accounts, and he could write and say whatever he pleased to the world in the name of the king. Sound familiar? He could control the voice of. He gave him his signet ring, means he gave him his signature. But now, what happens at the end? I see a comment. Give me 1/2 sec. Right? When the letters are sent, at the end of everything about this story, we find out the last 2 words. Ushlalam lavoz. Now, why are those the last 2 words? Well, oftentimes in oratory, the last thing that people hear is what they remember. By the way, in this call for a popular uprising against that nefarious, mysterious, ubiquitous foe, everybody knows who it is. By the way, whatever you can grab your hands on, you can keep. What a great king. He lets us have whatever we can steal. Shelley points out that we're perhaps propitiating God like the pagans do, which we don't. Sacrifice for us, not God. Point well taken. So let me come back to that point. Hold that thought, as I often say when we learn together. When you think about what's going on, there is an element of the kingdom of Achashverosh, on and on and on, that is deeply insecure. The parties are not for entertainment; they're for bread and circuses. The idea that Haman is so powerful, and the king says, "You know what? Don't tell me. I don't want to know the name. Just take it away." We know that kind of euphemistic language, for the sake of plausible deniability, has many later historical analogs, and let the 20th century be proof as well. It's unclear whether there's sanction or not sanction, but there's a wink, wink, nod, nod, and the last words here are again all about the money, all about follow the money, and that you'll get lots of goodies if you just go ahead with the with the stealing that comes after the killing. Yeah, you could take the artwork, you could take the property, all of these things. Again, it doesn't require too much sermonic engagement to understand that there's something here that is actually deeply resonant for us, unfortunately, in a very, very sad way, to other historical events. Now, back to the sources. Rashi points out, let's stay with Machzit shekel for a few minutes if we can, and then we'll dial back into the world of what's going on with Haman, and why the statement of Reish Lakish, I should point this out before we go further, is a very strange statement by Reish Lakish, isn't it? Instead of just saying, oh, our shekels are going to countervail his shekels, it is revealed and known before the one who spoke and the world came into being that this was going to happen in the future. Something was going to happen about an enemy of the Jewish people counting coins regarding the Jewish people. So I'm curious on this specific question. Why? Why was it important for Reish Lakish to say this is known and this is revealed and known before the one who spoke and the world came into being? It seems like a very flowery way to speak, doesn't it? Seems like a flowery way to speak. And the question is, why should that be? Feel free to unmute yourself. I'm taking questions and comments on this statement here. Any takers? How about Hashem knows everything? And Reish Lakish is announcing, proclaiming, and letting us know, by the way, you think that it's just a historical accident that Haman shows up and in the Megillah, it's reminding us about this thing with money. You should be aware that there's actually a broader plan afoot. Oh, you're not able to unmute? Still not? Let's try that again. Whoops. Yeah, I took that away somehow. Sorry. Okay, try to unmute.
Okay.
Okay, good. I was wondering, why is everyone so quiet today? Is something I said? Okay, go ahead.
It's a free will thing, business again. God being omniscient and knowing what's all going to happen, but still allowing it to happen. So God...
Not removing free will, but at the same time, there's a plan. I mean, this is not something we've ever solved. Not us in this shir, not in the world. This is what we have from the sages of old. Hakol tzafui v'rashut netuna, says Sefer Pirkei Avot. Everything is foreseen, yet free will is given. This is a conundrum. The Rambam writes about this. It's wider than the ocean. You'll never figure out the answer to this. We just know God is beyond time and space. He knows everything, and yet we have free will, which gives us accountability, responsibility, etc. But there's something else. It's that hackneyed word again. The hackneyed word from the last year, that before the last year, I don't think I really ever used it. Unprecedented. Remember the unprecedented? Says Reish Lakish, you think it's unprecedented? You think it was not foreseen that this was going to happen? Don't worry. Not only was it foreseen by HaKadosh Baruch Hu there would be such a moment, but there's actually already, if you will, the expression of Chachamim is the refuah precedes the makkah. There's some kind of a curative that comes before. Now, is that curative on some kind of a metaphysical level? Or is it when you're going to shul, I'm going to shul, we're hearing Parshat Shekalim, we should remember that there's a plan that's going on over here and that we're part of that broader plan. And we don't always understand. So why is this happening? We're left with those questions. We really don't know. But
Rabbi,
comes Reish Lakish and says, I just want you to realize, Galui v'yadur lifnei mi she'amar v'haya olam. It is clear before and revealed before the one who spoke and the world came into being. And you need to know that up front, that by the way, that there would be a Haman, and the Haman would come and he would try to do this thing with the Shekalim. Again, it's ambiguous. Is he claiming he's going to pay the king, or is he claiming he's going to get paid and he's going to deposit it? He's going to get paid and pay it out to the workers. It's not entirely clear. That's an ambiguity. Helen, go ahead. I'm sorry to keep you waiting.
Yeah, we have a lot of players waiting off stage. We have Bilam's donkey. We have the dog Hagadol that comes to swallow Yonah. Obviously, it was not a fish that was around, but it was a special fish sent from this waiting room.
Correct.
And so I think he's not unique in bringing up those players in waiting.
For sure. It's even more than that. It's exactly what you're saying, but it's even more than that. That's the whole point. There's a Mishnah at the beginning of the 5th parak of Pirkei Avot, about 10 things that were created during what's called the Bein HaShmashot, means in the period between sunset and dusk on the 6th day of creation. What is that? Everything most of the things that you're mentioning, right? The point is that which seems to be supernatural, you should be aware it was already in place before. Reish Lakish, no doubt, studied Pirkei Avot on Shabbat afternoons. No doubt he knew it. He knew it cold. And what happens next? He realizes, you think that really the Jewish people, we're beset by this terrible, nefarious foe, but it so happens that we have this mitzvah that we're meant to do this thing called Machzit Shekel at exactly the same time of the year. That happens to be the beginning of Adar, which is because it comes before Nisan. And that we're going to be involved in this because actually we're getting ready for Korbanot for the new year. I have news for you. There's another piece to it. And that is a historical piece. In other words, what Reish Lakish accomplishes is he says, I'm bringing in the idea of the Shekalim into the realm of Purim. Now, by the way, when is this story happening? Where are the Jewish people living? These are rhetorical questions, so obvious. The Jewish people are not living in Yerushalayim. They're living in the middle of Persia. You know where there's machzit shekel? Maybe they read it in shul on Shabbos. That's about it. Oh, there's a basket on Tanit Esther in the afternoon. They didn't have Purim yet, yeah? But around this time of year, I could just imagine, I don't know this, I'm making this up, but like that's what we do today, right? We have a basket, and there's 3 silver coins, and they're wrapped up in tape. This year it has hand sanitizer next to it and a box of gloves. Okay, it's a tradition. It's not a mitzvah. It's a tradition. You put in $1.50 per person, and you lift up, and you say, Zecher l'machzit shekel, in memory of the machzit shekel. What do we have when we don't have it? Of the remembrance of it. Rish Lakish says to Klal Yisrael, listen to me, it was already known that this was going to be part of the plan. You didn't see it coming because we couldn't have known. You couldn't have looked in the Sefer Torah, and do Torah codes, and you tease out, you count up the letters by Parshat Kitisa. Oh, Haman. You couldn't do that. But retrospectively, see, why is the Megilat telling us a whole story about this guy with his coins? I just want to know, I'll pay you off. The king says you can keep the money. So here's along the same lines, Reish Lakish says, I just want you to realize, you know how there's a Mishnah telling us that when the Jewish people have a Beit HaMikdash, on the 1st of Adar, they start announcing to everybody, we're going to start the collection of the half shekel for each, for the korbanot for the year ahead. Yeah, by the way, there's also something historical that Purim put another piece into the constellation of, you could say, rationales, reasons, or understandings of what's going on. Now, in this parsha of Machzit Shekel, we find Rashi. We learned this Rashi together. Those of us who are on we're in the shir together for the 4-part series again about coronavirus, about plagues. We learned this Rashi. V'lo yeh behem negev. There shouldn't be a plague in the counting. Therefore, they have to do this thing with the half shekel. Shehaminyan sholeit bo ayin hara v'adavar dever ba aleihem. Because when you count, it causes the ayin hara, evil eye, and a plague comes upon the Jewish people. So when we did that series, we focused on what happened in the days of David, where David somehow unwittingly has a hand in bringing this about, and we're trying to understand how that could be and what it might mean. Then we learned the Malbim in Sefer Shmuel Bet. Now let's see the Malbim's approach here, including the approach to, again, reviewing what is ayin hara. So he explains the following. And we don't have time to read every line inside, but just give you sort of the synopsis. If you're more adept at the Hebrew, you can read it inside. But he basically says the following. Because of what happened in Chet HaEgel, Moshe Rabbeinu was interested in making sure to count whoever was left. 3,000 people died. The Torah testifies to that. Of course, the Sefer Torah was not written at that exact moment so that he knew the exact tally of who died. So after a plague, he wants to count the people, but he does not want the counting itself to cause more problems, more of a plague. Therefore, he decides perhaps that he should count them with, as Shaul will do later on, with an object. Let the object be little stones, according to Rashi there in Shmuel Aleph, little stones, pebbles. Each person will be represented by a pebble. Let it be maybe sheep. Each person will be represented by a sheep. But no, he's told instead, you'll count each person. You should count. But while you're counting, you need to do something to offset it. There needs to be an atonement payment, a kofer nefesh, like the word kapara, like Yom Kippur. So this was in the wake of a terrible crisis in terms of the relationship between Hashem and the Jewish people. Moshe Rabbeinu is concerned. The analogy given in Rashi, based on Chazal elsewhere, is it's like the wolf had now been loosed among the flock. Now the shepherd, after the wolf has been taken away, the shepherd wants to count the sheep that are left. That's actually in Sefer Bamidbar, in the vicinity of Parshat Pinchas, of the count that takes place there. Rashi uses that analogy based on Chazal. So when you count them, so God was saying, Kiti Sad Rosh B'nai, so when you count them, you should count skulls, count heads. Don't use the pebbles, don't use, right? And don't actually even use, according to the Malbim, don't use the coins. Count them. That's why it says Kol Aver Al Pekudim. But you need to do something to offset the fact that there's a count going on. But you should also give the Shekalim that will be a kofer nefesh. And when you do that, that will prevent the plague through this, as a result of this counting. Should have underlined that too. So God is promising Moshe Rabbeinu, look, do the count regular. This is not as most other Mefarshim understand, that the half shekel is instead of the pebbles or instead of sheep, but rather he says, I understand what's going on here to be count the people, but you do need to do something to offset it. Let each person pay in something as an atonement, right? And he goes on to say that whatever is left for a vestige of the problem of the plague that is within them from the sin of the golden calf, that will end. It will stop. You will stop the plague through this atonement payment. There will not be a negef, there will not be a plague in the future, but also there won't be one in the past. The one that's going on now, it will cease. According to this, a gulgolet is a skull by the head. It's a head called a head count. Yusar hanegef. That will stop the plague. You know why? Ki hashkalim hem kofer nafsham. It is the atonement payment for their souls. In case they did something wrong, they did. Cheta egel. This is oftentimes how the curative dimension plays out for Hashem, that it is the exact opposite of what you would think there would be. And Shelley, of course, you're already preempting the next question. What did the Jews do wrong that they had to have an offsetting atonement offering? I'm getting there, but it begs the question, doesn't it? What the Jews did wrong in the story of Cheta Egel is the Jewish people are complicit. By the way, who doesn't get counted? Shevet Levi. You know why? Because Shevet Levi didn't engage in Cheta Egel. It's the people who engaged in Cheta Egel. They're the ones who are giving in the kofar payment. They're the ones who are being counted. They're the ones who are felled in the plague. But on Purim, we should ask the question, so why are you still doing it ongoing? One answer is, well, the Machzit Shekel is not for census. The Machzit Shekel is for the purpose of having everyone pay in so that the lambs that will be offered over the course of an entire year and other korbanot tzibur will be representative of each and every Jew. Now, the Malbim here gives examples. It was bitter waters that were cured by a tree that itself was bitter. The copper snake in the case of the biting snakes, and so on and so forth. The Medrash says usually a human being injures with a needle or a blade and cures with a bandage, but God, he uses the same element to cure. Yeah, that's how it works in terms of biology so often. If I wanted here, I could take an off ramp and have a whole conversation with you about the nature of vaccines. But let's not go down that road. Not the mRNA ones, but vaccines in general, about the injection or the exposure of the body to some element of the disease itself. Think about smallpox vaccine, polio, et cetera, et cetera. And you have, of course, here with regard to some of the vaccines now that are going around with regard to coronavirus, the COVID-19. It's interesting, but that's neither here nor there. So this is why, says the Malbim, that's why there was never a mention of this as a commandment per se. It was mentioned as if you want to do it, kitisa at Rosh Hashanah, so when you want to count them. So before Cheta Egel, if you ever want to count them, this would be the method of doing it, and that would be fine, and you don't need to know anything else. But you will need to take some kind of preventative measure, right? Which is to say, to prevent a plague from transpiring. But why is it now positioned in the Sefer Torah where it is at the beginning of Parshat Kitisa? It's a precursor to actually what's going to end up happening shortly thereafter, which is the Cheta Egel, the same kind of idea. So v'haya rak hoda ala atid b'im titzarech lekach im yachatu. If the Jewish people sin, then you will need to do a count, and that count will need to be in a certain manner. That is to say, with an offsetting payment of a machzit shekel, and that will be the count in Arva Moav after the Magefa. That's the one in Parshat Pinchas, where they're encamped in the plains of Moab. In the whole story over there, and there also it would seem they would have given in the Shekalim as they were commanded to do, and it is considered a refuah for a plague.
Rabbi?
Yes.
Although I had never thought about this subject before,
Yeah.
I now can't help but think of the numbering and tattooing of the Jews during the Shoah at a totally different level.
My original flyer for this year was actually a picture of someone's arm with the numbers. My editor told me that's not a good idea. Maybe it'll be received badly as co-opting too much of the memory of the Shoah, even though it's for a Torah purpose. So I thought the better of it. I went with a list of people. But Baruch Shekivanti, to your thought, it's the same thing. The branding of the people, Lo Aleinu, is itself an act of dehumanization and reducing them to the numbers.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you as
thank you.
always.
I think is exactly it. Look at the next part of the Malbim here.
Rabbi, I did
Oh,
not
sorry.
read what was the sin for the gold. I understood that their sin was the golden calf. What's the sin in the Purim story?
Yeah, I said I'm not there yet, but
Okay.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there. But there is something going on. Yeah, you agree with me? There's something strange that's going on. Obviously, there's something happening. Yeah. So let's try to see it. Okay. Let's try to see it inside. That's the idea. So the Malbim goes on. He gives us the following. He reminds us, and we learned this, many of us together in the shir. We learned this already before, but I thought it'd be important to see it again. Now he says, what's the story with the half shekel, davka, and that the rich shouldn't give more, the poor shouldn't give less. There's something else there as well. He says, I already explained this in Sefer Shmuel Bet. So this is like a rerun, but this is the version that appears in the Sefer Torah. So counting itself causes damage and it causes plagues. Why? 3 reasons. Number 1, it's ayin hara. That's what it is. Ayin hara, which he explains over yonder in the world of Sefer Shmuel as related to jealousy. When you count, then you know how much there is, and then others outside of the nation, others inside the nation, whatever it is, start thinking of themselves in quantitative terms, and that causes jealousy. I would say the commodification of human beings throughout history has always been a terrible blight on Klal Yisrael. As a negative, thinking about things for us, it's worked out badly, very badly for us. Okay. Bet mitzad she'ena bracha shorel b'davar hasamui min ha'ayin. Bracha exists within something that is hidden from the eye. He's quoting from Chazal who have this idea, and once you count it, the bracha leaves. He says, and I explained it there more in depth. Ayin Sham, you'll have to go to that shir. For these 2 reasons, you could say that it was actually going to be good to have some kind of atonement to get rid of the negative, right? Which crops up, which grows, which festers as a result of this, and you get this plague that results. The plague starts with the plague of ayin hara, of the jealousies, and it is the idea that bracha is in something that is outside of the purview of being quantified. The 3rd reason is ki kol od she'am mitachadim v'im kulam ki'ish echad zechut harabim gadol me'od. As long as the people are unified like one person, then the merit of the collective is great. But when you count the people, then you've separated every individual. Everybody is a name, rank, and serial number, or just a number on an arm, or a number, and that's all they are. Right? Mafridim kol ish bifnei atzmo v'yichufsu ma'aseihem v'az yishlat behem negev. Then the judgment comes. Now, in the case of nefarious foes, the Jewish people, obviously, that's part of what they're doing, the dehumanization, the commodification of human beings, the reducing them to financial terminology, the liquidation of people and of their assets. But the Malbim has something a little bit different in mind also, which is that we're being judged by Hashem, each as individuals. We no longer can rely as much on the collective, because the collective is no longer one whole. It's not a whole that's greater than the sum of its parts. It's actually a sum that has a number. That's a total of some sort. So to fix this, what's the mitzvah? That everyone should give a half shekel. What does the half shekel teach? It teaches about how everyone is united, that every individual is merely a half, and no one can claim that they are a whole. And everybody, therefore, has to have someone else with them to make something whole, even if it's just one other person. You need a fellowship. The poor, the rich and the poor, for instance. The rich person cannot add, he can add tzedakah to give it to the poor person to make him whole. The one gives, one receives. And therefore, thereby, they'll become like one person. There's a giver and a receiver. And in this manner, nobody is whole. And that reminds us about bringing everyone together and their collective, so that they will not be separated through the count, but rather they will unite. So that's right there, an important piece of it, don't you think? On two levels. One, the count itself has a payment in which every individual, their act of being counted is associated with an act of unification with the other, being part of a collective, not an individual. That's one. And two, where's the money going? It's going into a fund for a common ongoing project of the Jewish people, who are themselves constantly and forever building a place and a manner of serving Hashem. Both the building of it, the Mishkan, and the upkeep and the maintenance, and quite literally to keep the fires of the Jewish community burning. Yeah, I use that term again and again advisedly today. Omnam, says the Malbim, mitzvah zu nishara kavua ledorot. It's not a mitzvah for one time, it's for every generation. Shemitzvah kol achlitin chatzi shekel bechol shana. How often? Every year a Jew should be giving it. Every year, to remind yourself. And we have examples from Nach in book of Nehemiah, the idea about mentioning also about the collection of some sort. Why it was a different currency, he says because there was different currency values at that time. So it was a third, not a whole, not a half rather. In Divrei Hayamim Bet, the question of, again, also about collection, right? And the idea of taking this money. Who mitzvah, he writes, who mitzvah tmidit lidorot, that they should take from every year. From the people should have a collection done, the Kesef HaKippurim. And where should it go? To the service of the Oel Moed, right? To buy everything that's required for the ongoing upkeep of the house, of the great house of the Jewish people. And when you go back into the Megillah, don't you see the preamble to mentioning the money? What Haman says? Let's dial back again. Before he gets to the part about the money, I'll collect the money, I'll pay the money, the money. What comes before? Haman says to Achashverosh, there is one nation, Yeshno Am Echad. But what's their characteristic? They're spread everywhere, they're scattered. Bein Ha'amim. They're not one nation. They're one nation, but they're not really one nation. Is this not right here the contradiction of so much anti-Semitism? The Jews are everywhere and united, and yet they're scattered everywhere, and you don't know. So it's that same contradiction back and forth, and that's what's going on. They're within all of the places, and they don't get along. They're simply spread apart. What's the curative? On Purim, we know what the curative is. You make a nice meal, take 2 food portions, and give two ready-made food portions to your friend. It's a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to be a nice person. Yeah, apparently on Purim, it's not just a mitzvah to be a nice person, to be a good person. Kedoshim to you. Get some food, comfort food, nice foods, whatever it's going to be, a nice portion for your fellow, and give them a nice food portion. There's a mitzvah stuck every single day of the year. We don't do it on Shabbos in terms of giving money. Okay, granted, Yontif, we can't do it. But it comes Purim, everybody should give Matanot LeEvyonim. Why? Because we're all in it together. The building of that sense of solidarity is exactly part and parcel. And I believe that's what Reish Lakish is telling us. You know, the money that we gave for the Machzit Shekel preempted the money already with Haman. In Haman's world, the money is about a commodification of the people, a liquidation of the people. And the king is saying, you keep the change. You can keep the money. I don't even want it. Doesn't matter to me. Yeah. Again, not because he was magnanimous as much as because if we let the people keep the money, they'll be real happy. Right? It wasn't about the king, because you understand politically how it goes. If the king is willing to get rid of a people, just wipe them away. So first, it's Pastor Niemöller, right? First, they came for the communists, and I wasn't a communist, so I didn't speak up. Then they came for the trade unionists, I wasn't a trade unionist, right? Then when they came for me, there was no one to speak up for me. Yeah, that's Pastor Niemöller from the Protestant minister from the Second World War, from the Shoah time, but it has analogs before. If the king's willing to kill them and take their money, you're going to come for us next. Oh, no, you're going to get to keep whatever you take. It's a free-for-all. I'm giving a gift to the people. What's a gift? I give into your hand amnesty. Kill whoever you want, take whatever you want, and it'll all stay in your property. Says Reish Lakish, you know what came well before it? Kadosh Baruch Hu already baked in, to Shelley's point, and it was Helen was saying, I'm sorry, from the Mishnah, there are things that it's already in place. The mouth of the donkey's in place, the rainbow's in place, all the different elements, the luchot are in place, everything already existed, so to speak, in some way before. And you just be aware that when it arrives, it shouldn't be a surprise that when it shows up later on, it was actually part of some kind of a grand plan, which could never have been forecasted in advance, obviously, by us. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he knows. So the idea of the Machzir Shekel is, as there's going to be a quantification, there's going to be something about numbers that has so many negative connotations. V-Day, whether it's the idea that the counting itself requires some kind of an atonement offering, or whether it's generally the problem with counting is ayin hara. The problem with counting is that you take away the notion of bracha because now it is reduced to something numerical, or maybe whether it's the idea more positively that we want to show that there is unity and we are bringing the people together like one person. And therefore, the Zechut HaRabim would be great. Now, it's not just the fact now of the collection, but what the money's being spent on. What is it being spent on? The Jewish community. This could have been a great infomercial for shul membership or something. But that is the idea that's being advanced right here before our very eyes, right? When you pay into something larger than yourself, that's to do with the Beit HaMikdash, for the korbanot, etc., just realize you are now part of the zchut that is the zchut of the rabbim. Yeah, and this idea that the Jewish people were going to have a great merit that would stand in good standing for them for the future is part and parcel of what is playing out right here. Yeah, there may be a time later when the Jewish people need some kind of merit because maybe, some of the other merits that they have are actually in some strange way, I don't want to say they've used up their credits, but maybe in some way there's something that happened that is now going to, they can no longer draw a card from the deck, you could say it that way, to say, well, we have the merit of the of all the generations past. We'd like to invoke that, as a means of defense in case we're not any longer in God's good graces, if you will. And that story may be very much related to the holiday of Purim, as follows. There's a Gemara that many of us know. We're very familiar with this Gemara, no doubt. We've seen it many, many times. It's the Gemara in Masechet Shabbat on page 88a. It's the Gemara that describes how the Jewish people stood at the foot of Sinai. They stood at the base of the mountain, but the way it describes these words, they stood at the base of the mountain, but Tachtid Ahar could also be read as they were underneath the mountain. Amar Rav Avdimi bar Chama bar Chasa, Melamed shekafa Kadosh Baruch Hu aleihem et ahar kegigit. God held it over them. He lorded it over them. The mountain was held over them like an overturned cask. Amar lehem imatem mekabel mator. If you accept it, then good. Ve'im lav, and if not, sham take furatchem. There will be your burial place. But the Gemara then notes, Amar Rav Acha bar Yaakov mikan muda rabba leoraita. I loosely always translate this the same way. It's an asterisk on everything in the Torah, because the people didn't really freely accept it. They said Na'aseh v'nishma, and there's a gun to their head. There's a mountain over their heads. They didn't really, truly accept it. Now, again, like it could be two perfect Jews, one who literally says God can do anything. So he could lift up a mountain, literally. He literally held a mountain over their heads. It's levitating over their heads and was going to crush them. No problems with it. Personally, I lean more in the direction of Mefarshim who understand this in more allegorical terms. A lot of people say, if God would speak to me, my life would be different. If God would just come out from behind the curtain, kiviyachol, and say, it's me. This is how you have to be. This is what you have to do. Then I would believe. Okay, so that happened. That happened at Har Sinai. But what's the downside? Where's your free will? Are you going to say no? It's an offer you cannot refuse. They couldn't refuse. And therefore, there's an asterisk, a cloud, if you will, almost, that hangs over the entirety of Matan Torah. The whole thing has a cloud. Afal Pichein, says Rava, nonetheless, They did accept in the days of Achashverosh, as it says, Kimu v'kiblu haYehudim. The Jewish people accepted upon it says Kimu. They fulfilled Masha Kiblu Kvar, what they had previously accepted. What does that mean? Where was the sense of oppression, external force that was forcing the Jewish people to stay Jewish in Persia? It was missing.
There wasn't any.
Exactly.
They
The
could
answer I was
easily, I mean,
looking
that's
for.
the whole idea of what the Assyrians did with the 10 tribes and in all the places that they conquered. You mix everybody up and you
Right.
get rid of nations.
We don't have time to see all the sources inside, but you summed it up just now perfectly. In Persia, it's not about decrees against the Jews' ability to be Jewish. It's parties, it's bread and circuses. You're a citizen of the 127 provinces until Haman comes and says, they're not really. But that's external. That's being Jewish because someone hates you, instead of being Jewish because you love Hashem and the Torah, etc. There's no description in this book about the Jewish people keeping Shabbos. Doesn't mean they were breaking Shabbos. I'm not suggesting that, chas v'shalom. But there is a Gemara that describes Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai going back and forth with his students. Why did the Jewish people, it says, why did the enemies of the Jewish people, it's Megillah Daf Yodalet, I think, why do the enemies of the Jewish people deserve destruction? And the answer comes because they went to the parties. You know, now I'm sure they ate glad kosher at the parties. They had special airline meals, but they were dancing the dance. They were syncopating to the music of Persia. Now the Gemara goes on to say, because of that, they should be killed. No, Chalila, maybe they worshipped idols. They never said they worshipped idols. They made it as if they worshipped idols. They pretended, if you will. Now, whether that literally means they were bound down to idols, I don't know. I don't have a record of that, but that's sort of in the dialogue. And the students sort of say to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, really? Is that really what happened? Now, why does that come up in a discussion like that they worshipped idols? Why are those the two choices? When did the Jewish people, may I ask, ever dance a great dance and go to a great party? And when did they, perhaps, according to some of Farshim, dance around an idol? Now sounding familiar? In the Torah, Chet Ego. What comes after Chet Ego? The curative is, among other things, they do tshuva, obviously. They have the idea that has to be a kofar nefesh. Moshe wants to count them because he's nervous. These people died. Count the flock. Comes around Purim every year. Jewish people throughout the world are going to read the Megillah. 2 weeks before comes Rosh Chodesh Adar, the Shabbos before Rosh Chodesh Adar, or when it is Rosh Chodesh Adar like it is this year, we read a parsha that says there's going to be a kofar nefesh. And what that's going to do is it's going to unite a people whom the enemies, and maybe sometimes some of us, think of as very split apart. Ask yourself now how all of those slogans feel over many years about talking about Jewish unity, now during the pandemic virus. Suddenly the mitzvah of Ahavta L'Orecha Kamocha became a very challenging mitzvah for so many of us when we see what's doing with different people and the different reactions. I don't want to go into polemics, Khalila. I'm just saying it puts us on notice a little bit. Yeah, well, here comes Purim, where the Jewish people are meant to be united. At Har Sinai, what does Rashi say? When the Torah says, Vayichan Sham Yisrael neged Ahad, the Jewish people encamped, it says in the singular instead of in the plural. Rashi says, Ki ish echad b'lev echad. Like one people, like one person with one heart. That's exactly what the Malbim said back over here. And kulam ki ish echad. They're like one person, with the merit of the collective is very great. Now, in the end, in that Gemara with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, I didn't give it to you this morning, but in the end, all we get to is, did they really worship idols? No, ki'ilu, it's as if they did. And then, the point of the Gemara is at the end, the sort of the punchline is, ki'ilu, God was going to allow the Jewish people to be destroyed. It wasn't really going to, but ki'ilu, as if, like we had a big scare. And when you realize these dynamics, give me a second, Helen. When you realize these dynamics, you start realizing, so what's the Shekalim? The Shekalim is the kofar nefesh. It's to remind us that we need the merit of the collective, that we are a collective, that we are in the same boat, that we have a sense of solidarity. And the Shekalim themselves remind us of sort of a continuing relationship with Hashem, which now we don't actually really have a Beit HaMikdash, right? But we have the Zecher, the Machzir Shekalim. We don't have the Zecher, at least we have the Zecher means the mention of it. The Zikaron Lifnei Hashem. the remembrance before God, at least of mentioning it by reading the Parsha. Helen, go ahead. You're waiting patiently. I'm so sorry.
Okay, it's okay. 3 asides.
Yeah.
Number 1, Achashverosh doesn't take the money. Does that make him guilty of hovo nischak malo, like Paro, that even he's got some kind of guilt against the Jewish people? Because why isn't he taking the money? Then number 2, in the case of the sailors with Yonah, the Gorel has a completely unrelated thing opposite of statistics. It's not really based on statistics. And number 3, does Rambam say, twist the word nishma v'naseh? Doesn't he have some comment of that nature?
I don't remember that. I've not heard that. No,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And regarding,
I'm not familiar with that, so I don't want to say.
I heard that recently. And then about the Gorel with this whole thing, and what is Achashverosh feeling without taking the money?
Oh, okay. So we got to get to that. Why did Ahasuerus says I don't want the money, right? That's true.
Right.
In fact, he says I give you the money. Hakesef natun lach. So let's see it inside.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for that. The Gemara describes that the king says to Haman, the money is given to you, hakesef natun lach ve'am, and the nation too. Lasod bo katov be'inecha. So Rabbi Abba says that the analogy of Achashverosh and Haman is like what? Like two people, each have a problem. One of them has a mound in his field. Rashi says that's like Achashverosh has a mound in his field. And the other one has an abscess, a hole in his field. So the fellow who has the hole says, I wish someone would fill the hole that I have. And the one who owns the mound of dirt says, oh, great. I wish I had a hole to fill it, to get rid of this smooth things out. All right. So in one case, the topography is damaged because there's obstacles. In the other case, the topography is damaged because there's an abscess, something's missing. So they find each other, these two people. So the Baal Charit says to the Baal Atel, why don't you sell me your mound? It would be very helpful to me to put it into the hole that I have. So what does he say? No, take it for free. Bahalavai, it'd be great. I'm happy to give it away to you. This Gemara and others like it mean to hint to us in very strong language that Achashverosh is in cahoots with Haman. He just doesn't want to get his hands dirty. But he doesn't have any love for the Jews. He thinks they are, if there's clear land that he could farm in, this is disturbing him. Because the Jewish people are not going to just go along quietly because they're still going to have at least the forms and the structures of their religion, etc. And Haman says, everything I have and everything I am is nothing. I have a hole in my sense of self because of the Jewish people. Now, of course, it starts with one person, but isn't that also one of the biggest, most common anti-Semitic tropes, like one, like all, right? We see each individual as representing the whole group. Now, there's much to say about this, and I'm going to have to table that part till next week, but just look with me at this very, very bizarre comment of Tosfot. When Achashverosh said a kesef natun lach, the money is given to you, Tosfot tells us the gematria of the word hakesef is ha'etz, the tree. He was hinting to Haman, you're going to be hanged on a tree. Now, did Achashverosh know that when he said it? Of course not. What's with the numbers game? Tosfot wants to just tell us a nice piece of medrash over here. And by the way, it's about the money, and you could have it. Means you're going to get the tree and the numerical value of the two. So let me say before we look at any more sources, did we not just learn for the last hour and a few minutes about the significance of the numerical value of things? That money and counting, while you could say numbers are fungible because they're just numbers, on another level, they also are a language. And they also convey and communicate information and meanings and messages. Ergo, Tosfot just sort of let you know, by the way, there's another layer of meaning that's going on here, and it has to do with the quantification of things, has to do with looking at the numbers. Now, a few chapters later, we're going to have again with the money. That's going to be in chapter 6. it's going to be strange, but Haman, when things are seemingly going well to him because he's been invited to a party, he's going to be very happy, and he's going to come bouncing into his house. But on the way, he's going to see Mordechai, and Mordechai is not bowing to him. So what does he do? He goes to his house to speak with his beloved friends, with his inner circle, and with his wife. And he tells them, did they not know? Like, I'm sure his wife was rolling her eyes. Again with the money? And the first thing he wants to tell everyone is, look how rich I am. Look how much security I have because how much money I have. Everything else is like secondary. The first thing on the list is I am wealthy and my money is mine and it's the source of my honor. But then, by the way, I got access. I got to go to the party, but none of this means anything to me. Verse 13, mean anything to me at any time that I see that Jew sitting in the courtyard. It doesn't mean anything to me. And then what does she say to him? Of course, why don't you make a tree and hang him on the tree, right? But now look at what happens when the next section, this idea that he's obsessing about money and finances and the like. We learn here in the Gemara of a very strange concept. It's sort of the backstory of Haman coming further along in the story. It's actually only pretty much a day later, coming to have to take Mordechai on the horse. The Gemara describes that he finds the Chachamim sitting together with Mordechai leading Shir. And what are they learning? They're learning Hilchot Kemitza. He's teaching the rabbis about the halachas of Kemitza. What's Kemitza? Kemitza is the way in which you take a handful when the Kohen has to pick up from a meal offering a little portion that he's going to use to put onto the altar, onto the Mizbeach. In the Mikdash, he goes like this, and he takes whatever can fit in his hand, and he scrapes off with his pinky and with his thumb, so there's not too much. And that's what goes up on the altar, a little tiny piece. So he sees that's what they're talking about. So here are the rabbis in exile, hundreds of kilometers away from Yerushalayim. And what are they dealing with? The halachas of the minutiae of taking a little handful. So when he sees Kevin the Chazi Mordechai the Apik lekable v'susei miyached biyadei mirtat. When Mordechai saw that he's coming in and he's motioning for him to come out of the shir and he's got a horse behind him, he got scared. So Amar lahu Rabbanan hai rishia lemiktal nafshi kaati. He came to kill you. Zilami kamei lo tichvu begachalato. Sorry, Mordechai. He was facing the students, presumably, or by the way, not little children, it's students. And he says to them, get out of here. Let me be the one who will get burned in it by his coal. I'll get killed, meaning, but you get away. Yeah. In other words, we're all in this together, but I need someone to survive. So you, the students, get out of here. He really came for me, and let him not make this about everybody. He just wants me, really. Let him have my head. So what did Mordechai do at that exact moment? I imagine Haman's waiting at the door. Haman, who is now degraded because he has to actually take Mordechai and honor him. Mordechai doesn't know that. Mordechai gets up and he davens right away. And he wraps himself up and he's davening. Ata Haman v'yativ le kamayu vorich ad salik Mordechai tzlute. And he has to wait for Mordechai to finish davening. Another time, we'll get back to this. What does it mean Mordechai davened in the middle? Like, hold on, I'm going to say Tehillim, while the jackboots are pounding on the floor. It doesn't, but that's what the Gemara describes. Samarla, who he asked him, like as a curiosity, lahavdol fe'avdalot, even in fictitious films, you always see the villain always like some aside, like he's interested. Before I kill you, let me ask you. So what are you involved in? What are you doing here? To Haman, the idea that anyone's learning anything, it's like, what are you studying? And he sees him. He's describing what Kemitza is. Said the description that was given by Mordechai is as follows: Amarle bizmash mikdash kayim, when there was a temple standing, mandem anadav mincha maitim mile kumtze v'sulta umitkaper le. A desulta means a kumtze desulta means a kometz, a little handful of fine flour could be brought by a person who was poor as an offering. When the Beit HaMikdash was standing, that would be our relationship with God, even a little bit like that. Amar Lahu said Haman back to Mordechai, Ata mile kumtza de kimcha didchu, this little handful of flour, solot, this fine flour, he said this flour in general, V'dach yasara alfei kikare kaspa didi. It's pushed away my 10,000 talents of silver. All right. So what's going on? Haman is being explained that we're not buying off God. That even a small amount, a little tiny bit, a little handful of flour, a person can enter into a relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. It can be a meaningful relationship with Hashem. In our case, we would say today, machzit shekel, for in terms of this period of time. But there's something here about just a little piece, a little meal offering, and the idea that people in exile are thinking about the Beit HaMikdash. Anyone who's learning Daf Yomi knows how much of, let's say, Masechet Pesachim is about Korban Pesach. And like, there hasn't been a Korban Pesach in thousands of years. Yeah, but you never know. I don't know what to do. And so we're learning about these worlds of Tumah and Tahara, and the world of Kodshim, and how to give Korbanot, etc., because for the Jewish people, we're looking with that vision to the future. But more than that, we're even, and that's the point of what exactly they were up to, even someone who gives a little meal offering, it's going to be enough. And that means that an individual gives that little meal offering, even the small quantities, but in relation with Hashem, is meaningful. Now, Mordechai answered him, Rasha, Eved shekana nechasim, Eved lemi, unechasim lemi. He said to him, you wicked, you evildoer. He showed him up. He said, you know what? Never mind your calculus. The truth is, if there is someone who is wicked, who is, a slave, anything they acquire automatically belongs to the master. It seems like a strange thing to say to him, but that is what's described. That he sallied forth with this line to him. If you look at it in the Megillah itself, to show it to you on the screen, there's something here that is going on behind the scenes. Why is Haman so exorcised every time he hears the name Mordechai? So on the face of it, it's that he won't bow down to him, right? It's that he won't subjugate himself to the dictates of the Jew, of the government. The Jew is resisting being subservient. But Chazal have a tradition that there was actually a history that antedated this interchange between Haman and Mordechai, that they know each other. We've learned about it in previous years. For want of time, I'll just tell you how it goes. Apparently, in the army of Achashverosh, both Haman and Mordechai served. And apparently Haman ran out of money. And of course, in the olden days, armies did not provide food. You got your own food. You bring your own food. Haman ran out of money. And he borrowed money from Mordechai, which he could not pay back. And in some way, the Medrash describes he was like subservient to him. The Gemara alludes to it here, the Gemara Masechet Megillah, as follows. Amar Rabbi Elazar, Amar Rabbi Chanina, B'shashra Haman et Mordechai Yoshev B'shar HaMelech. Amar, he said, Kol zenu shaveh li. He did so when he said this. It was Rav Chizda, as Rav Chizda has taught. Amar Rav Chizda, Zeh ba bepruz buli, v'zeh ba bepruz buti. This one came with his pruz buli, and this one came with his pruz buti. So what are these references to? Something about their ranking, about what transpired in some previous engagement they had. Amar Rav Papa, v'karule avda de mezabein betalmi, that he actually owed him this money that he had not yet paid back. He had actually somehow sold himself for a loaf of bread to Mordechai. And there was something here where there was a great resentment that he had towards Mordechai because he knew Mordechai had his number and that he owed him money. Teaches us that all of the wealth of this man was inscribed on his heart. Now, whether that means that he had his spreadsheet, he was wearing a screen and it had the spreadsheet with his money, whether it was his ledger, he wore it around his neck, or whether it means he had some kind of a precious gem that he held, and that was all of his wealth was contained within it. The point is, when he saw Mordechai, he said all this, he pointed to his own sense of self. He was wearing the wealth, he was wearing the gem or the ledger, whatever it is, it's worth nothing to me. The pruzbuli and the pruzbuti, the description here is Mordechai came with a claim of wealth and Haman came with a claim of poverty, because Haman had sold himself to Mordechai previously, many years ago, for loaves of bread when they served together. Rashi's quoting this Medrash, and they served together in the army. The buli is the wealth, the buti is the poverty. Okay, fine. Now, According to Tosfot on this page, when the mention was made by Haman of this way in which your little thing of flour comes and pushes away my 10,000 talents of silver, Tosfot says that they heard that somehow, and many of the Mefarshim, which we won't have time to see already today, try to figure out how this actually works out. Maybe that's why Tosfot would say, I heard. But Tosfot say, I heard, or we heard, that the 10,000 talents of silver are actually the machzit shekel of every single Jew, which is 600,000 when they left Egypt. That's the archetypal number. So he said, I'm going to give to Achashverosh, I will give that to Achashverosh the amount of money that would have been of their machzit shekel collection. He says, go, and Tosfot would say, go figure it out, you'll find it. Go search it, and you'll figure this out. The truth is, the Mefarshim are all scratching their heads. How exactly does this work out? And I don't know if it works out numerically. You can look in the Pnei Yeshua. You can look in the Maharsha. Different Mefarshim have different ideas about it. But what's the idea behind it? You thought it was far-fetched that a non-Jewish person who was an enemy of the Jews knew something about the Jewish calendar? We can't say that that's far-fetched anymore. You know about the Goebbels calendar. When you know that certain Nazis, particularly Eichmann Yemach Shemo, spoke Hebrew, knew about Jewish culture. They knew Jewish literature. Is it so far-fetched that Haman knew something about the ways of the Jews? Not far-fetched at all. And he knew that every year, at the beginning of Adar, the Jew gets up and starts with this business about, we're announcing everyone's going to give, we're paying membership to where exactly? Then he comes to the base madrash and he hears they're also talking about this other little tiny quantity. But he realizes if the Jewish people in exile are talking together about how it's going to be in the future, and they're dreaming about the future, and they're saying that you actually don't need to be a rich person to have a relationship with God, and you can even bring this little handful of fine flour and you can gain atonement, like the machzit shekel brings atonement. He realizes, I'm done. I can't really undo these people. And ergo, the mitzvahs. Yeah, Shelley, go ahead.
You answered my question about propitiating God because it doesn't work because of the small amount. But now there's a new question. Why was it seems in a way that Mordechai was bringing this on himself and on us by treating Haman in a bad manner.
Not for today. You're right, but not for today. But not for today. But I will say this Gemara that you're reading happens already after Haman made the tree, after Haman decides he's going to kill the Jews, after already he's on the downswing. There's a question, why exactly is Mordechai like needling him? Mordechai doesn't even know why he's there. By the way, some of the Mefarshim, I'll tell you now, one line. Some of the Mefarshim say that Mordechai's on a suicide mission, that he wants to infuriate Haman to such an extent. He doesn't know that really Haman can't touch him because he's in the good graces of the king. He doesn't know that. That was an old story that he saved the king. He doesn't know the king woke up and decided to put this man on a horse. But what does he know? If I can let Haman vent his rage on me, maybe that will slake his thirst for killing Jews.
But our relationships with non-Jews, if you've got this idea of jealousy.
Now we're going down a different road, you and me, Shelley. I can't do it today. I don't have time.
You mean the business about selling somebody for a loaf of bread? That's what I mean.
Oh, but that's not what happened though. Yeah. Okay, but there's more to say on this subject, but that's like another topic. Here's the Maharsha one line that we learn that the whole point of being a yachid, being an individual, that's why he told him that story. If you were an individual and you wanted to give just a meal offering because you have nothing, the poorest of the poor, you can't give an animal, you can't even give a bird. You showed up with like a little bag of flour, good enough. In the time of Beit HaMikdash, it'll work. The individual can have a relationship with God. And what's the machzit shekel? You're not an individual. It's everybody in it together. The Pnei Yeshua, he has an idea. I don't have time to go into it. It'll take too long. Skip. Okay? I just don't have time. Here, Esther Rabbah, the same idea about the word hakesef is the gematria is ha'etz. So the cheshbon of one is the cheshbon of the other. It's really weird that came up. Really weird, right? Strange. Very strange. Skip this. Okay, you know what? We'll do this one line, right? At the moment that the king said to Haman, the money is given to you, meaning I don't even want your money. I don't want either their profit, I don't want their loss, meaning don't tell me what you're going to do. The Ruach HaKodesh, divine inspiration, as it will, cried out, right? Said out loud, Hakes natun lach, ha'etz natun lach. You think when you speak, you're talking about the money, the tree will be given to you. Now, by the way, notice that it says the king. And we learned, the Zohar Kadosh teaches, we have this also in the Midrashim, in the Gemaras, Chazal teach whenever it just says Hamelech, not Achashverosh, but Hamelech alone. It's not just the king Achashverosh speaking, it's actually Hamelech Achashverosh on one level, and on another level, it's, so to speak, the king of all kings, Hashem speaking. He said to Haman, the money will be given you, not the money, but the tree. Okay? Now, Mordechai, when he finds out about this terrible plan, he finds out about not only about the bad things that are everything that's transpired, but also look how Mordechai finds out somehow about the money that was going to be brought. What does that have to do with anything? Like if someone were to tell you in 1939, by the way, there's going to be a terrible, terrible genocide, attempted genocide, and also they're going to take the property, who cares about the money? Yet here it is on display in Perek Dalet. It's something about the money. And we learn here that there's something under the surface that's going on. So various of the Mefarshim, I don't have time now. I think you have this various places. You have the idea of Al Ginze HaMelech. There's going to be money. It's going to be money that's collected, that's going to be brought to the hidden treasury, the storehouse of the king. So and now you see the Machzit Shekel. No, says Reish Lakish. We already gave the Machzit Shekel into the treasury of the king. And here the idea that it's being brought up by Mordechai is related to this idea that there is something going on where Haman is saying, the money is going to somehow, I'm buying the Jews. I'm buying my rights to the Jews. The Jews are spread everywhere. And then the Jewish people have already, however, given their money, as it were, to the treasury, the storehouse of Hashem, of the king. Through what? Through the Machzit Shekel. And therefore, it's of great concern. So as he's conveying to Esther, there's something terrible that's going on here, he also mentions about the money. Says the Gemara Masechet Chulin. I need 3 more minutes. I'm terribly sorry. If you have to go, I totally understand. Apologies. But once we're here already, let's finish at least this point. Where is Haman mentioned in the Torah? Asks the Gemara, and the answer is Hamin Ha'etz. If we had time, we'd look up chapter 3 of Sefer Bereshit, which is the snake says, is this the tree? Hamin Ha'etz. Or rather, God says to the people, God says to Adam and Chava, Hamin Ha'etz. Did you eat from the tree? Yeah, but and you look at Sefer Torah, the letters are Haman Ha'etz. Haman is going on the tree. Haman is the tree. So look at what the Chatam Sofer from Lashono HaKadosh, his holy language, how he describes this, and we'll have to end with this today. Haman mina Torah minayin. Where do we know about Haman from the Torah? Ktiv. It says that Parshat Kesef Sher Amar Haman Lishkol. It's regarding the money. This is the comments of the Chatam Sofer on this Gemara, but he's now quoting from this pasuk. That's why I put them here. And Rashi wrote Perush HaKesef. Ve'amarti kavanato ki hayu rishonim menachashim beheter al pi davar yotzei mipi kemo nichush Yehonatan ukemo shiluach melech Aram gabe Yehoram. Basically, let me explain what Rashi was driving at when his oblique way. I didn't give you Rashi; we don't have time for it. But the idea of somehow trying to divine small d in a permitted way something that may be coming. This is what Achashverosh had said. Hakesef natun lach ve'am. You get the money and you get the nation. Lasot bo katov be'inecha. Ucheshetishma Esther hadavar yetzemi pi hamelech. When she will hear that that's what the king said, tachlit chas v'shalom ki efes tikva v'Yeshua. She may say there's no hope when she hears that. Al kain hodia la Mordechai perusho shel kasef gematria eitz. Therefore, it says the Chatam Sofer, what Mordechai was basically telling her when he mentioned things about money and about collection, and he mentioned the word about Parashat HaKesef, the money, he was telling her actually that the kesef is referring to the tree. In what way? Now, whether she knew it or not, literally, I don't know. But this is the drush of the Chassam Sofer. As Tosfot wrote in Megillah, V'imkin adarabba, piv hichshilo, the mouth of the king, actually caused him to fail. More ha'etz natun lach lihitalot alav. V'hainu vet parshat hakesef. The matter of the money was known. The parsha, the story about hakesef. Now, again, you'll catch me and you'll say, Esther is sitting with the message and she's transposing the numerical values of the words. Literally, that's what the Chassam Sofer means. I don't think so. The point is, though, that when they wrote up the Megillah afterward, they want to show that actually, even at the most dark, terrible, harshest time, there were already hints that Mordechai was conveying to Esther, don't worry so much. Va'ati shapir. It's going to work out in the end that actually that the tree hadn't been built yet at this moment, you understand? But you and me, we've already been through Purim how many times? So we already know what's happening, right? So the Chassam Sofer actually signals this. We should really ask us, wait a second. Of course we know that in the end Haman was hung on a tree. Yeah. You and me, we read to the end of the story, said Chassam Sofer. So we know that when the king said the money, he really meant the tree, and he didn't even know what he was saying, that on a spiritual level it was the tree. But come on, seriously, says the Chassam Sofer. They're attaching to the word of the kesef the gematria of tree. Come on. And if, let's say, she was transposing the word kesef equals the word eight, she was figuring out it means a gallows. The gallows wasn't even built yet. So, this doesn't add up. So listen to this. Here's the Chassam Sofer. El shekabala hayta bi adam she'atid echad mishluchei nachash kadmoni lihi kashel betliat eitz. They had to receive tradition that one day one of the emissaries of the primordial snake, the Nachash Kadmoni, would himself be hung up, would himself fail by being hung on a tree. As it says in the Torah, Hamin ha'etz. Al-Kain. Hamin ha'etz, Haman ha'etz. So when they saw that the foe's name was Haman, they said, wow, we look in the Sefer Torah, it's actually the two words are juxtaposed. Al-Kain ksheyatzim yipeh achashverosh ha'kesef natun lach, Chashav Mordechai shezeu Haman hara hazeh sofel adin be'etz v'hainu Haman min haTorah minayim. To sum up, the idea here, and I know this is a complex idea, but the point is, already Mordechai was figuring out that, isn't it fascinating that the enemy's name happens to be Haman? Haman ha'etz, Hamin ha'etz, Haman ha'etz, and the idea that the king said ha'kesef, they know that there's going to be some downfall for this enemy, and it's got something to do with a tree. The tree hasn't been built yet, the edifice, but it's coming. But the idea that there was hope that was given to Esther in some way about this, and it's bound up with the notion of the money, of the point of what we gave, if you will, the machzir shekel, that was in and of itself countervailing the force, the impact of what it is that this nefarious foe sought to do. And the idea of this is also why we're reading Parshat Shekalim. We're remembering that the money matters, that our investment in Jewish community, our investment in Jewish unity and solidarity, not just of the machzir shekel, that today is but a remembrance, but also the Mishloach Manot and the Matanot Le'Evyonim. We already have a harbinger to it right at the beginning. If you think about it, that's why there are extra mitzvahs that involve bringing people together. It's another one of the reasons on the Yontif of Purim. Haba Aleinu L'Tova. If he said, I'm mefuzim forward ben amim, then we're going to be as together as we can be and as united as we can be, standing together and celebrating together in solidarity. Adkan for today. That's all we have time for.